Community psychology and preventative strategies are two things that I feel are very necessary, especially when it comes to the aspect of a church. Now, obviously, these aren't strategies that are meant, per se, for individuals, but as looking at a group in its ecosystem of people in it, i.e., a community. And one thing the Bible talks about in depth is being in community. We are the body of Christ. We're supposed to love one another. Now, the issue with that is living in a fallen world, sin enters the picture, and we forget how to love our neighbors. Or our enemies, whichever one. Sometimes our neighbors are our enemies, and that needs to be remedied too. But when looking at the aspect of a church, community psychology is something that needs to be prevalent. Whether it's by a professional or by the pastor, there needs to be strategies put in place. That way, the community itself can be healthy. And that ranges from the church as a large scale, going all the way down to individual ministries or teams. I've been in student ministries for quite some time, and in one of the ministries I was in, we had basically two cliques of leaders working there. And we gossiped about one another. We didn't communicate with one another. When we were forced to work with the other pairs, it didn't work well. And essentially, we let our own personal issues get in the way of the glory of God. If the pastor had noticed it, I don't know what was going on. Not all blame is on him, because we definitely had our own issues in our hearts. But if maybe the pastor had noticed it and implemented strategies to get the two teams to come together and work cohesively as a unit, then we could have been much more effective for the students we were trying to serve. We would have been less gossiping. We would have actually maybe liked each other, and overall just worked well. It also comes down to leadership teams. Maybe the pastoral headship and the secretaries that are close to that need to have strategies put in place to make sure that they are also working cohesively as a team, so that they're as effective as they can be for the glory of God. And that's kind of what the community psychology and the preventative strategies deal with, is they're trying to prevent things from happening first off, and promoting community health. And it's something that Paul talks about in Corinthians. He starts talking about how we are a community. We are all part of the body of Christ. We have different roles, and we need to work well together, being that community. He immediately follows it up with that we need to love one another, and promote healthy living or operating environments. So the community psychology has a lot to do with that, and I really like how the expert, so to say, isn't really someone who's in the front of it. They create strategies, they create programs or something like that, but then they kind of evaluate it. After they've said, all right guys, here's the curriculum, they evaluate it to see how is it working, and then kind of give pointers and tips here or there about how to be more effective in their community. Instead of, just being like, all right, well, you guys are doing this wrong, you guys need to work on this. Also, how does that make you feel? Statements that aren't normally said by a community psychologist. They come in, evaluate the health of the organization, put in a program, and then the organization is expected to use the program. The organization is expected to work on becoming a healthy community together, uplifting one another. And yeah, it's going to be hard at times, because there are people who don't like other people. It's like we live in a fallen world or something. Imagine that. But it's up to the community itself to work on their issues, and not always going through a mediator. Sometimes it's necessary, and that's what the expert is there for, but it's not the primary goal of the community psychologist. So I like the idea of a psychology theory dedicated to working with organizations, dedicated to working with groups of people to help the groups of people come together better. And also like the preventative strategies, trying to keep things from going to the point of where intervention is needed. We all, we know about cold and flu season, so what do? Is we get flu shots. It's like a preventative measure or something like that. But that's essentially what the preventative strategies are there for, is to prevent bad things, chaos from happening within the groups. And so these are strategies that I feel like should be implemented by every church, honestly. That way, those communities, those organizations can work together for the glory of God.